és határozottan azt kell mondanom, hogy
I have prepared some numbers, and I must firmly say that Ukraine's collapse will be a big problem for Hungary. So, not only is it not in Hungary's interest for Ukraine to collapse, but we must do a lot to ensure that it does not happen. The rural person understands this precisely, as does the real estate speculator. The value of your plot is not only influenced by the condition of your own land, but also by the state of your neighbors and who lives there. That matters. And it's the same with countries. The best would be if we were surrounded entirely by Austria. I cannot promise this just yet. How can I prove that the government is serious about this? I will tell you two numbers. Ukraine's entire electricity supply comes 44% from Hungary. Without this, they would have already collapsed. 58% of Ukraine's gas supply comes from Hungary. Just as a side note, we bring in Russian gas and pass a portion of it on to the Ukrainians. The world is a bit more complicated than from Brussels. They see it. So the situation is that we need a stable Ukraine. We provide help. It hurts that some of it is stolen. This will result in a golden toilet, not under a bankruptcy. The war. But the war does not strengthen Ukraine, it destroys it. Only peace can strengthen Ukraine. Whoever stands by Ukraine must support peace, must want peace. Today, Ukraine does not add to Europe's strength, but takes away from it. Ukraine does not make us stronger, it makes us weaker. 180 billion euros have gone, and now they have decided on another 90 billion, 270 billion euros. With that amount, a country the size of Ukraine could have been built or modernized, or if we had taken that money to North Africa, we could have implemented developments there to prevent migrants from coming from that region, from that direction to Europe. Huge money, huge opportunity, and it went to nothing. Yesterday or the day before yesterday, Russian assets were almost on the brink of triggering a direct war threat in Brussels, but it was successfully averted. By seizing Russian assets, Europe would have sent a declaration of war to Russia, but we managed to intercept the carrier Pigeon in time. That's what happened. In 1 minute, this happened. What is it about? Just so everyone feels the cold breath of the threat on their neck. Two countries are at war with each other. Ukraine, Russia. A third party comes in who is not involved in the war, strong, the European Union, and seizes the Russian assets. The one who is at war takes those assets, talks about 230 billion, takes it away, and gives it to the other party at war. What is this if not a declaration of war? What can such a European Union be considered if not an enemy? And if it's an enemy, then we are already involved in the war. So, taking the assets of one party at war and giving them to the other party at war, it means that you have entered the war with a huge amount and are seriously up to your neck in it. Of course, money often plays a role after wars. That's why I say that I don't remember from my studies that during the war they confiscated, say, currency reserves. There is such a thing. We Hungarians can tell stories about losing the war. One wins, the other loses, and the loser is obliged to pay reparations. This happened to us after the First World War, together with the Germans. This happened to us after the Second World War. Reparations. That can be discussed when the war is over. But during the war, you cannot do such things, because that means you have entered into the war, you have marched into the conflict. It's only a matter of time before your soldiers are there too. The German Chancellor's interview yesterday, where they are considering whether to send peacekeeping troops to Ukraine. Reporter, and what if the Russians shoot at the German troops sent there? To which the Chancellor responds, we'll shoot back. That's called a war. This is where we are now. Take it seriously. It's not child's play. We're not at an anti-war meeting by chance. It's not just a simple gathering, but an anti-war meeting. We are. The war is direct, dangerous, knocking on the door, and we must not open the door to it. That's why so many of us are here, to hold it back. But also acknowledge that in this very important action to save European peace, the key role is held by the Belgian Prime Minister. Played. The Belgian. He fought heroically. Did it ever occur to you to put the two words, Belgian and heroic, together? To mention them in the same sentence? But I saw this with my own eyes. With my own eyes. May Viktor Orban praise you like this. This poor Belgian prime minister was prodded with burning irons. His flesh was torn with tongs. For a whole day, but perhaps earlier, for weeks. Experts, because they were Germans. They didn't joke around. And this man, he stood, endured, and persevered. If he hadn't persevered, we would be in big trouble today. So glory to the Belgian prime minister. Europe needs peace. At this moment, I do not see the chance for it. There are too many wounds. They have been pierced too deeply, and such things heal slowly. Peace is possible. Peace is where there is no war. Can we count on anyone other than ourselves? No. I would have to give a long lecture on how the Americans have been involved in European peacekeeping, and whether that is good or not. For example, the end of the First World War would not have been what it was if the Americans had not intervened, and if we in Europe had decided it ourselves, we would not be sitting here like this. Then, with multilingual interpretation, there would be war here, and it would be hot, because there would be the St. Stephen's Hungary. But the situation is that the world has changed, and the money, which is a magnet in world politics, toward which countries turn, is not in Europe today, but in Asia. Therefore, the attention of the Americans is also turning that way. Much less attention on Europe. If Europeans think that the Americans will defend them, they are greatly mistaken. Europe must be able to defend itself. Let's set aside nuclear war for now, as that a different story. But when it comes to conventional weapons, border conflicts, and economic wars, Europe must be strong enough to defend itself. The problem today is that with each decision, Europe becomes not stronger, but weaker. We are making ourselves. The best example of this is what we're talking about now, Ukraine. I'll say it again. Ukraine does not add to Europe's strength, but takes away from it. We should not be financing the Ukrainian army. On the western side of Ukraine, we need to strengthen the armies of the countries on the western side of Ukraine. We need to strengthen the armies of European countries. And we need to strengthen the European defense industry so that if there are any problems, Europe will not be vulnerable to anyone. If they had done it in February, March 2022, in April, if the European leaders had done what we suggested, the European economy would be in a much, much, much better state today, and the war would not have cost the Hungarians a single penny. But the people in Brussels did not choose this path. There was a big debate. Or perhaps I'll say a few words about the most recent one, too, about what I had to say. There was a big debate about this then as well. It was clear that we could start down two different paths. We had reached a crossroads, either this way or that way, and they chose the path of sanctions. My suggestion was that sanctions should not be introduced, but negotiations should immediately take place with both warring parties. Not to side with one, but with both, and possibly to calm the whole situation down. They decided not to do that. I remember he definitely said that we would cripple the Russian economy. That's how he put it. The Russian economy. Instead, sanctions were introduced, and here we are. The sanctions are causing the trouble because the sanctions led to the rise in energy prices. If there were no European sanctions, there wouldn't be such energy prices. In Europe today, people and businesses are paying 3 to 3.5 times more for energy than in America or the other competitor, China. How can one compete like this? There's no way to compete. Of course, we are severely beaten. Europe's share of the world economy is continuously decreasing. The Americas are maintaining it, slightly increasing, and the Chinese are rising. Meanwhile, we are going downward. Europe, make no mistake, refers to the European Union. Instead of providing energy to Hungary, belonging to the European Union today takes energy away from us. The European Union is only attempting to somehow make this historical decline bearable. There is no thought or plan on how to progress from decline, transition to stabilization, and growth. There is no such program, and all this was caused by the sanctions. It's hard to convert to forints. I calculate in euros that the loss to the Hungarian economy exceeds 20 billion euros due to the war of the last 4 years, and the sanctions related to it, a huge amount. Now, we have averted the direct threat of war, but the threat of war today is greater than it was before the Brussels summit. So, don't mistakenly become complacent. Why is it greater? It's greater because although the frozen Russian assets were not stolen or confiscated, they decided to give a war loan. They decided to give a war loan. This is 90 billion euros at this moment. They are giving this war loan to Ukraine, which means that Ukraine will pay it back. Let it be so for me. Well, let the Tisza election win in Hungary, so that the Ukrainians pay back the loan. That's roughly what it means. We did not come in vain. We did not come in vain. So we have to give a loan to Ukraine. But there's another problem. Not only that they do not pay it back, but that we don't have the money. So what do we have to do? We also have to take out a loan. We provide a war loan to Ukraine. And if we don't have the money, we have to borrow from banks and lenders. The loan taken out must be sent to Ukraine. And when it turns out that the Ukrainians cannot pay, then what we gave them has to be paid nicely in London to the bankers on their behalf. This is a situation. 90 billion with interest. That's where we stand. What follows from this? Who wanted war so far? A few European politicians who think that a country with nuclear weapons can be defeated with conventional means wanted war. In a war, good luck with that too. They should rather spend time with their own grandchildren instead of engaging in such activities. We do not take such risks. Those who always want war are the ones who, or any armed event, who manufacture weapons. These are the arms manufacturers. And now a third group has appeared. So how can a loan given to Ukraine be recovered? Because it can be recovered if we defeat Russia in a war, and after defeating it, we oblige it to pay reparations. This is why now even the bankers want you to continue. Because otherwise, how we get our money? So they can get their money back by militarily defeating Russia. If Russia is militarily defeated, this is how it comes together. So I want to tell everyone not to trust that European politicians are sober enough not to drag us into a war. They are not sober-minded enough for this. There is only one thing to trust in, and that is the European people. You can trust in that. You can trust in yourselves. In Szeged, and in Hungary, and in Slovakia, and in Croatia, Italy, Germany, we must trust the people who will hold similar gatherings. Make no mistake. Right now it's only in Hungary, but it won't take half a year before there are large anti-war gatherings in Germany, and in France too, and we must trust that the people will force peace from the ground up. This is the only thing we can rely on. They always think that if there is a war involving Russia, it should be used to weaken Russia. They should be weakened as much as possible because they live with the awareness that sooner or later Russia will pose a threat to them. So, although they did not start the war, they think that if Russia is weakened by this war, it is good. Then there are countries small in the same quarter of Europe who think that the Russians pose a constant and direct threat, as their countries previously belonged to the Soviet Union, and they might want to take them back there. Then there are the great European traditions, right? Well, Russia has been attacked, let's say by Napoleon, hasn't it? And Hitler didn't succeed, because obviously now Kaya Kalas will... And generally I must say that if you go to museums in St. Petersburg or Moscow, you will see that Russian paintings are not in Paris or Berlin, in the museums, but rather the spoils of war taken from Europe, including Hungarian ones. So, provoking the Russians getting into a war, attacking them, I would caution everyone against that. So for responsible people to stand up and say, go ahead, ask questions, because then they would ask things like, how did these few million migrants get here when we didn't want them? And they would ask how we got to the brink of war, and who allowed you to send money to Ukraine. I want to say that European leaders have fed their own citizens the idea that this is a war that won't cost them a single penny, because we will seize Russian assets and pay for everything from that, and we will defeat the Russians, and there will be a good exchange. This is what they were fed. Now the truth comes out. This is what happened this weekend in Brussels. It turned out that this is not the case. And now they have to dig into the pockets of Spanish taxpayers, the Germans and the Portuguese, and they have to pay the price of the war. Now comes the awakening. And the Western leaders are chasing their money, because it will become fully apparent, appearing on the widescreen, all of this. And they will ask, but how did you dare to do this? Just as the Germans have already wiped everyone responsible for migration from their politics because of migration. This moment will come. And well, the European leaders are not hastening this moment. Well, I feel exactly as you would feel in my place, because it is indeed a difficult to handle situation. A situation, which of course refers to the crazy driver, where everyone is coming towards you on the highway. And indeed, a French person, a German, might say, "My dear friend, we all think differently about this. Why do you think that you are right?" And at the beginning, this was difficult. But now it's easy, because I fought the migration battle with them. All 27 of them said, 26 of them, that you are the one confronting the data. And I persevered, and now they would give an arm for their conditions to be like those in Hungary regarding migration. So now I have a reference point, which is about this. Now, briefly, because there is serious commanding, I'll tell you in a nutshell the speech I gave on Thursday to the other 26. In a nutshell, twice I attempted to achieve a strategic change to this body, the Council, by the following means, in its war policy. Both times I failed, probably because I did not argue well enough. Once I suggested to you that we make a 180-degree turn when Donald Trump won the American presidential election. This relieves all of us. We change. The second time was when the Russian president met the American president in Alaska. Another opportunity. I suggested to you that we change our strategy. You rejected it. But now I will make one more attempt for the third time. I ask you to consider, let's make a 180-degree turn. Let's stand behind the American president and do nothing else. Let's support the American president's peace efforts, and in the end, let's achieve peace. Because believe me, financing peace is cheaper than war. This is what I ask of you. This was my speech, roughly.